Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we're going to see what the monsters of Arcadian are all about. Within today's landscape of horror and science fiction cinema, few creatures are as unsettling, baffling, and loaded with secrets as the beings that lurk in Arcadian. The film directed and written by Benjamin Brewer, a young filmmaker who managed to bring Nicolas Cage on board as the central figure of this grim survival odyssey, amplifying the emotional weight of every scene through his restrained and vulnerable performance, yet one filled with fierce determination. The story places us shoulder to shoulder with Paul, a father who, despite the exhaustion and hopelessness closing in on him, is determined to protect his sons, Joseph and Thomas, on a remote farm lost in a world reduced to ruins and echoes of what civilization once was. Every sunrise brings the same unyielding goal: stay alive, endure one more day, and above all, survive the fall of night, when ruthless beasts emerge from the shadows to devour any living thing they find, human or otherwise. Although at first glance, its premise may echo films like A Quiet Place or Bird Box, Arcadian stands apart thanks to how it reinvents the threat. Its monsters aren't mere predators, but abominations whose silhouette, behavior, and mystique elevate them as the ultimate antagonists in this story steeped in tension, oppressive atmosphere, and symbolism that leaves space for interpretation. In this content, we'll dive straight into the universe of these nocturnal predators. We'll unravel every clue deliberately planted in the plot, put Brewer's own words under the microscope, and reconstruct their possible origin, exploring everything from their physical design to the secrets behind their ferocity, their meticulous hunting habits, their unusual abilities, and the cracks in their apparent invulnerability that open a window, however small, to the hope of surviving them. The film welcomes us in abrupt and harrowing fashion. We see Paul wandering through a ghost town in search of supplies, surrounded by buildings overtaken by vegetation and covered in a silence as thick as the fog that shrouds him. Civilization, as we knew it, lies in rubble, devastated as implied by these ravenous entities that even took his wife from him. The blare of sirens shatters the calm and marks the start of the nightmare. Explosions, blood-curdling screams, and frantic chases through the gray mist as Paul flees an invisible ambush, dragging with him the last of what he could salvage before finding refuge on a secluded farm, where he promises his little ones that everything will be okay, even if he himself can't fully believe it. That murky fog swallowing the city isn't just a simple apocalyptic backdrop. It becomes a key clue for guessing the possible origin of these creatures, as if the very atmosphere were contaminated by the presence of these spawn that emerge from the darkness. After that tension-filled prologue, the story jumps ahead 15 years. Joseph and Thomas, now teenagers, shoulder the daily routine of combing the surroundings for provisions, fixing what's left of the farm, and keeping the flame of survival alive. But there's one unbreakable rule: always be back before the sun goes down, because when night falls, any whisper, creak, or misstep can become a death sentence. These predators stalk and hunt with a method as precise as it is terrifying. Though the family dynamic, marked by Paul's protective bond with his sons and the spark of hope that flickers in Thomas when he meets their neighbor Charlotte, gives the story a human heart, the film's true pulse beats in every encounter with these creatures, every glimpse that hints at their true essence. One of these revealing moments comes during the first night attack. The family dog, Rocco, grows restless and scratches at the ground in desperation, warning Paul and Thomas that something is lurking right beneath their feet. What they find confirms that the monsters aren't just mindless, hungry beasts. Joseph observes the sequence of attacks with an analytical mind. First a short 10-second strike, then another of 20, and finally a brief assault lasting barely a second. His chilling conclusion: they don't attack at random. They're patient hunters organized with a tactical cunning that seems to evolve each night, adapting to every mistake, every barrier, every human trick. The film leaves more breadcrumbs for those bold enough to follow them. Joseph, exploring an abandoned, rusted ship, accidentally unleashes a swarm of aggressive insects that nearly devour him alive. Meanwhile, Paul, trying to find a moment's peace near a waterfall, discovers a dark hole in the rock, a reminder that these creatures find refuge and power in absolute darkness. And when Thomas accidentally falls into an underground crevice, he comes face to face with them. Twisted, shapeless hands emerge from the blackness, trying to grab him. His quick thinking, using a makeshift lighter as a torch and a crude knife, allows him to wound them and confirm a vital truth. Though lethal, they can be hurt and maybe defeated. In a revealing interview with IGN, Brewer confessed that he deliberately left questions unanswered, scattering only enough clues for each viewer to craft their own theory. To him, these entities embody a new form of life, a symbiotic coalition of organisms that, faced with environmental devastation and the imbalance caused by humanity, fused and mutated to survive, becoming the new masters of the night. They're not alien invaders nor failed lab experiments. They were born out of a dying planet's desperation, blending traits of insects, mammals, and reptiles to become ultimate, perfect predators. Their grotesque, hybrid, and fascinating design reflects this chaotic mix. Bodies reminiscent of emaciated apes, human-like features deformed into nightmare masks, limbs evoking the agility of wild canines, and swarms acting like living hives. Among fans, theories flourish that fuel the myth. Insects carrying mutations, animals warped by radiation, genetic experiments unleashed after a nuclear disaster, all different versions of the same nightmare. For Brewer, however, the answer is simple and terrifying. These beasts are nature's revenge. An extreme response from an ecosystem ravaged, contaminated, and wounded to its core, birthing new predators to restore balance and remind humanity that there is always a line that must not be crossed. Every roar that shatters the nighttime stillness is a reminder that when the planet is pushed too far, the Earth itself finds a way to fight back and to reclaim, with teeth and claws, everything that was taken from it. For Ben Brewer, the heart of Arcadian beats in a powerful and brutal image. Creatures formed by the fusion of multiple organisms. A single mutant body that embodies nature's extreme response to the disaster caused by humanity. In this devastated universe, the human species has lost its privileged place at the top of the food chain, reduced to just another prey item on a vast list of victims. Unchecked pollution, rampant greed, and collective indifference ultimately gave rise, almost like a reflex act of planetary self-defense, to beings capable of reclaiming, with bites and claws, the territory that humans mercilessly devoured for centuries. This premise isn't conveyed only through dialogue or theories. It becomes palpable, almost tangible, in every frame. Brewer plants visual clues that reinforce the atmosphere of decay. Entire cities submerged under a veil of toxic fog, highways swallowed by weeds, landscapes choked in smoke that obscures the silhouette of collapsed towers and the skeletons of rusted factories. In every corner, insects and cockroaches crawl as messengers of irreversible decline, reminding us that the tiny, the seemingly insignificant, can be the source of the next great plague. Everything breathes a palpable ecological collapse, an open wound that won't heal and that, by night, bleeds monsters. From these scattered clues, a chilling hypothesis emerges. Insects may be the primordial spark that ignited the mutation. Think of the scene inside the old rusted ship when Joseph, trusting in his flashlight and his silence, accidentally unleashes a furious swarm that forces him to flee. What if, faced with a world saturated with chemicals, radiation, and industrial waste, these insects evolved? Entire colonies could have mutated, first merging among themselves, and then with mammals, stray dogs, abandoned horses, and even unburied human bodies. This is how these symbiotic abominations would be born. Living creatures made up of parts that aren't dead, but interconnected in an organic network that breathes, hunts, and devours as one. Their behavior obeys the pure logic of survival, rather than any conscious evil. They feed to perpetuate themselves, expand to increase their chances of success, and retreat to the darkness as their natural shield. Their aversion to light makes perfect sense within this twisted logic. They gestated in environments shrouded in chemical haze and perpetual gloom. Direct sunlight is not just a superficial enemy. It's an existential threat that attacks their biological structure from within. With this foundation, we can delve even deeper into what these monsters, or symbionts, as we might rightly call them, really are, and what makes them so memorable and disturbing. Their appearance is a walking catalog of recognizable and new nightmares. Imagine a sinister hybrid between the creatures from A Quiet Place, the ghostly forms of the angels of death, the organic viscosity of venom, the leakers from Resident Evil, and the interdimensional aberration of a demogorgon. Each specimen looks like a living sculpture of flesh, tendons, and fusion. Thin torsos with ribs protruding through torn skin, heads that hint at human features distorted like broken masks, bodies that blend wild animal limbs with chitinous insect fragments embedded like makeshift armor plates. They move on all fours, rise up on their hind legs when they stalk, and wield disproportionately long arms ending in curved claws that can tear through rusted metal doors as if they were soggy paper. A twisted and fascinating detail is the variety of their skulls. Some have elongated snouts that evoke wolves, wild dogs, or deformed horses. Others retain remnants of human features, but stretched, distorted, topped with grotesque jaws and bulging eyes that glimmer with a feverish glint in the dark. From folds of flesh sprout sparse patches of hair, translucent membranes or tentacles that writhe like exposed nerves, giving the impression that each creature is incomplete and in constant metamorphosis. When they attack, they move with an unnatural, nightmarish speed, jaws snapping open and shut spasmodically, claws extending like insect tongues to snatch prey at a distance, bodies contracting and expanding as they slip through impossible cracks, only to burst out of nowhere like an avalanche of muscle, cartilage, and teeth. Their mere presence shatters any notion of safety. If they can smell you, they can find you. One key moment confirming their true symbiotic nature occurs when Joseph, risking his life, examines the mutilated corpse of one of these beings. He finds no heart, no lungs, no defined organs. What lies before him is not a conventional animal, but a living hive, an amalgamation of tissues that function as an interdependent network. Each part is expendable if the whole survives. Their collective behavior reinforces this idea of a shared mind. After 15 years stalking the last humans, they have refined their hunting methods. They've learned to organize, dig tunnels to move unseen underground, block escape routes, and encircle their prey with chilling precision. Thomas senses that the increasingly direct attacks on their home and neighboring farms are not mere coincidences. They might be coordinated reprisals, a kind of biological vendetta for each offspring lost to Paul's hand. Brewer hints that this cunning is not just animal instinct. By absorbing human bodies, these symbionts may have assimilated fragments of consciousness, impulses, and rudimentary memories that sharpen their tactics. They don't hunt solely out of hunger. They learn, adapt ambushes, detect patterns, and when they attack as a swarm, they multiply their brute force, striking like a single hammer of flesh and bone. Some even cluster together to form living spheres, a monstrous version of the critters that roll at full speed, crushing and shredding anything in their path. But even these abominations are not completely invincible. Direct sunlight weakens them, slows their movements, and exposes their vulnerable flesh. They don't have an indestructible shell, a well-placed shot, a precisely timed explosion, or a surprise attack can destroy them, especially when they're isolated from the swarm. Their advantage lies in their collectivity. Like wolves or coyotes, the strength of one alone is minimal compared to the pack. Ultimately, Brewer turns these symbionts into a twisted mirror of violated nature, a living reaction to human arrogance. They're proof that when Earth grows tired of being plundered, it doesn't need asteroids or alien invaders. It only needs to let its smallest fauna mutate, fuse, and reclaim by force what always belonged to it. Every shriek in the shadows, every silhouette emerging from the mist, every lethal charge is a brutal reminder that sometimes the greatest monster is nature itself when it decides to balance the scales.